Hey everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Joshua Morton. I am the Director of Business Services with Ardent Residential, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Urania Murillo, who is a Senior Level Manager with Ardent Residential. Urania?
Hey, how's everybody doing tonight?
So tonight we're going to be speaking about what is the difference between vendor management and project management. There are vast difference in both of these categories, and we're going to hit on those topics. And also I have Urania joining me this evening because she has dealt with a lot of different vendor management and project management over her years in HOA management. And so she's a great wealth of knowledge and can share a lot of feedback with us. All right, let's talk about a vendor management overview. What is vendor management? So vendor management is the process of selecting, onboarding, and maintaining relationships with external service providers. These service providers are your standard vendors. They're going to be landscapers, pool vendors, pest control vendors, maybe a regular plumber that you have come on site. Urania, you want to name a few?
We have handyman, waste management, just to name some on top of my head.
Yeah, so vast variety of different vendors that help maintain each community. Why is vendor management so important? Effective vendor management is significant in maintaining property value and resident satisfaction. If you don't have the right vendors on your property that aren't giving your community the level of service they deserve, your community is not going to be happy. Your residents aren't going to be happy. The board's not going to be happy. And proper vendor management is really important from a board standpoint, from a management standpoint, to ensure that the community is looking its best. Let's talk a little bit about project management. What is project management and why is it different from vendor management? So as we discussed, vendor management is the day-to-day vendors, the landscapers, the pool vendors, pest control. Project management is going to be those one-time vendors. Project management oversight is going to be for those one-time projects such as painting projects or roof replacements. There's a lot of discipline and planning, organizing, and overseeing tasks to achieve those goals. You got to define a scope, a time, and a budget, and that is actually outside of the manager's responsibility and day-to-day duties to oversee a large-scale maintenance project such as that. A lot of times we get asked, what is considered project management? And it's a great question. It's usually any project that's going to go over a $5,000 mark. It could be a community-wide pressure washing project that is going to be done in phases. It could be a pond clear out. We are having communities getting painted all the time, and you definitely want a project manager overseeing that. Urania, can you name some?
Yeah, absolutely. We have, like you said, the painting of the exterior of townhomes or condos. The big one that I see a lot is the roof replacement. And a lot of people don't realize the amount of work it takes to coordinate with the vendor, the homeowners, and even the manager. So that's why it's very, very important to have a project manager.
Absolutely. And the project manager is in place to really provide that guidance and direction for the board. They'll put together a scope of work. They'll seek after the vendors. They'll provide a timeline. They'll provide a budget and timely updates for the community. And that is something that the manager.
Right. And these projects are not just a one day. Some projects last from a week to a month. So it's very important to be a project manager, to be on site, to know what's going on and the day by day activity.
Absolutely. And that's something that the manager, the management firm is not able to do, is be on site, monitor these vendors, and provide all of this detail to the board that they would really need for such a large scale project. All right, let's jump into the key differences, the focus and the scope. So as we mentioned with vendor management, it's really focusing on procuring and managing services for external vendors. And those are your basic those are your basic community vendors, right? That's your landscapers, your plumbers, even insurance agents. You know, you have to bid out your insurance to different agencies to make sure you're getting the best policy at the best rate. Um, Waste removal, pool vendors, handyman, and pest control, just to name a few. And you know, project management, it's really focusing on the planning and executing specific projects, those large scale projects that we discussed, the roofing, the painting, any fitness center and clubhouse renovations. I remember a few years ago, I actually managed a condominium, and their excuse me, the board there, I was talking to the board and letting them know that their clubhouse was not being utilized like it should and getting the rentals that it should because of how dated it was. It looked like 1999 threw up in that clubhouse. And I was like, we should, you know, get a project manager involved and, you know, have them really remodel that clubhouse. And the board was like, no, you go in, you tackle it, you paint, you get new floors. I was like, no. I'm not going to be the one overseeing that. That's way out of my scope. I'm not an interior designer. I'm not going to go and make all these decisions just for folks to be unhappy. Urania, have you experienced something similar?
Yes, not with them giving me that leeway, that responsibility, but you know, they do push back on a board push one of my boards pushed back on having a project manager. They said that it was unnecessary, that I could handle it. What they, you know, it's just not that I can't handle it, but the amount of work that comes with project management, so many errors can occur. So one little error can cost thousands of dollars to repair. And that's why it's very, very important to have somebody that has the expertise and experience in managing these large scale projects.
Absolutely. And they can spend their time and their resources really dedicating it to that specific project. Where else, you know, a portfolio manager like you, Urania, and you're managing multiple properties at once, it's not easy to juggle and make the proper decisions and time management for such large scale projects.
Right.
All right, let's talk about the key differences nature of activities. So vendor management involves on tasks like contract negotiation. That's huge. And with it being budget season right now, Urania, I'm sure you can comment on that. I'm sure you're having to go in and discuss a lot of different contracts and increases and everything. So talk about the significance in contract negotiation.
It goes in depth, you know, it's definitely one of those things where you just have to you have to be a negotiator. You know, the landscaping and the pool vendors are one of the big ones that like to raise their prices because of materials as well going up in price. But you have to be comfortable enough to know how to negotiate, what you're looking for in your contract, what they offer versus what they're charging. Even insurance, we have to bid out insurance bids, because sometimes one insurance company can charge $3,000 more than the other insurance company. And it's just very important to know your contracts, read your contracts, and know the scope of work that comes with the price.
Absolutely. Contract negotiation is extremely important, and having those relationships with your vendors is also very important, because it's easier to have those difficult conversations when it comes to those negotiations if you have that rapport with the vendor. Performance monitoring is an essential key, right? Like, we're not necessarily, the management company is not necessarily on site every week on the community. It depends on the contractual obligation. In some communities we're on site weekly, some we're bi-monthly, and most we are monthly on site monitoring those vendors. So you really want to have a vendor in place in your community that is actually doing what they were hired to do, doesn't need a whole lot of hand holding, and will, you know, take any constructive criticism well. I'm sure you're on it, you've had to have difficult conversations with these vendors, but you have great relationships with most of them, right?
Right. You know, it's very important to have a good relationship with your vendor because if we do rely a lot on the board and homeowners as well to let us know, hey, this was not done properly. So when I make that phone call, I can let them know like, hey, or let them know like something is not being done properly. And with that good relationship, there will take care of it immediately and make sure that to keep the HOA and the managers happy as well.
Absolutely. And going back to that relationship management, which is one of the biggest pieces of this, is we were talking about this earlier actually in a meeting. How many phone calls did you have to make to vendors just today?
Well, since I at least today, I probably made about 8 calls to vendors.
Yeah, see that relationship component is so important and essential that the manager, that the board even has that relationship with the vendor. Because if you have the good relationship with the vendor, they will really do anything for you. I've had vendors in the past that have been on site at jobs and I've needed something urgent and they've stopped what they are doing to take care of what I needed because of that relationship. So if you build those relationships with those vendors, they'll really do anything for you.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Moving over to the activities of project management. So it's a lot different. So it encompasses activities such as project planning, resource allocation, timeline management, and risk mitigation. So project planning is huge. I mean, you're going to have to come up, the project manager needs to be hired to come up with the scope of work. How much resources and time is it going to actually take? Put together a proposal, have a meeting with the client, with the community to go over everything and provide a start date, an end date, and also, no projects are going to be perfect. There's always going to be mistakes. We try to aim, project managers especially and vendors try to aim for there not to be mistakes, but everybody's human, didn't graduate past it. So risk mitigation is huge as well. So the project manager being able to really dedicate their time and overseeing this large scale project from start to finish, and risk handling any risk mitigation is huge. So moving on, let's talk about time frame. So vendor management with your regular vendors that are on site in your community every day, every week, every month. It extends beyond individual projects, right? Your landscape vendor, they're going to be on site weekly or bi-monthly or whatever they're contracted to be. Project management, it's a temporary process. It's a start date, it's an end date, and all of the updates in between. So with vendor management, what's great though is, Urania, we spoke about this earlier, is I lost my train of thought there. What were we talking about with the time frame with vendor management earlier? Do you remember?
I cannot remember specifically.
It's okay, no worries. Maybe I was thinking of a different slide. My brain must be somewhere else, so I apologize about that. But so
No.
yes, the vendor management goes beyond individual projects, and project management is just temporary, start date, end date, and all the updates in between to the client directly, outside of the actual management scope.
And also, even though it's a project manager handling the big project, the manager is also involved, especially when they have to send out emails. They're also aware of the schedule. They won't oversee the project, but they will be involved in what's going on. So
yeah, I mean, there's communication in both aspects of vendor management and project management. The manager, you're obviously going to have the day-to-day communication with the vendors, making sure that they are actually doing what they're supposed to do, following up with anything that has been brought to your attention, any projects that they've been given. The project management aspect, you're actually going to have the project manager really taking the reins on that, and they're going to be looping in the client as well as the management company to ensure all updates are provided for that specific project. All right, let's jump into skill sets here. So vendor management requires skills in negotiation, which we talked on, and we can talk more about that. Obviously, communication, contract management, and relationship building. Urania, I want you to speak a little bit on the relationship building aspect and why it's so important. I know we've already touched on it, but tell us something based on your experience or something that's recently happened.
Definitely. I like to have a good relationship with my vendors. I get a little more not personal, but I want them to be more comfortable with me. I pick up the phone when I take on a new community. I pick up the phone, introduce myself to all the vendors. I even give them my personal cell phone number just so they can have a way to contact me immediately if there's an emergency. It's just good to have that good relationship with them, just so everything is ran smoothly. I just had one, a landscaper found that one of the irrigation lines was, I guess it was, it was sprung a leak and it was flooding a part of a homeowner's backyard. And he immediately gave me a call. I was able to call the board and they gave me the approval to go ahead and repair the leak right away instead of just sitting there. So those
Yeah,
are the types of relationship you want to have with your vendors.
yeah, absolutely. You want to definitely have a great relationship with those vendors so you can just call them for anything that you need. What's great about Ardent Residential is that we work with several thousand vendors within the Atlanta MSA. And you know, we have such great relationship with these vendors that we are able to call on them day and night to get them out to a community to take care of what they need to take care of, especially in an emergency situation. And so those relationships are always super important. It's probably one of the biggest parts of vendor management, the contract management, relationship building, and you know, the oversight, right? You know, but relationship building, if you have a good relationship with those vendors, acknowledge that, you know, that they are, you know, it's an essential asset to the community that they are servicing. They will really, you know, give you the world at the end of the day, or give you what they can, right?
Right, right. You know, show them respect and they'll give you whatever you want. Is they want to be, you know, they do hard work. That their job is hard. Pool, landscaping, waste management. Those are jobs that I could not do. But they do it well and it's a hard job and they want to feel appreciated. So definitely give them that pat in the back and really have a good relationship. Very
Yeah,
important.
absolutely. I mean, I couldn't imagine working in this Georgia summer.
No, I cannot. So
um
kudos to them.
The skill sets with project management are going to be a lot different. It's going to take a lot of planning, organizing. They even need to have leadership skills and obviously the risk management. Leadership skills is very important as they are going to be monitoring usually multiple vendors. It's even if you're having a painting project within a community, there may not just be one painting company that they're overseeing. It could be multiple, or if all the roofs are being replaced, or you know, there's different people that are going to have different specialties with each project. And so the project manager has to really plan, organize, you know, make sure that these folks are getting done what they need to, what they were hired to do, and you know, provide those updates to the client at the end of the day. As it relates to risk management, Urania, you talked earlier about a project, and there was a deck color or something, and that project manager was able to get on that quick. Was the project manager overseeing something, and the wrong color was being used on
Right.
the
So,
deck?
yes. So it was a big deck project, and the project manager, I guess the vendor, whoever vendor they were using, they actually got the wrong color, the wrong stain. And thankfully, the project manager caught that right on time, right as they were doing just one swoop of paint, one half of a deck, and she caught that on time and was able to save thousands upon thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, could you imagine if all of those decks would have been painted the wrong color? If the
it would
project
have been
manager wouldn't have been on site overseeing something like that, it could have caused a really big issue. Um,
right.
another community, or a community in our portfolio is actually undergoing a painting project. It's a large townhome community, and all the units are being painted right now. And there's multiple vendors involved. You know, wood rot is having to be repaired. There's pressure washers to clean the property. There's painters that come in. So it's different people that specialize in different things that have to be monitored. But something similar happened in that community where the wrong paint was chosen, but there was a project manager, or wrong paint was actually painted on the side of one of the units, and the project manager was able to come in and notice it the same day and get it corrected before it happened to multiple units, causing a lot of money and time. So that's why it's so important to have those project managers on site. You definitely want to invest in the project manager, because as we've mentioned, the management company, the manager, they aren't project managers. As much as they would like to help, it's always best to have that person that specializes in that, overseeing that project.
And you definitely want somebody on site when you're dealing with such a large scale project. That people, someone needs to have eyes on the project.
Absolutely. And going back to that, at Ardent Residential, it is our objective and our goal to have any project that exceeds a $5,000 a mark to definitely have a project manager on it. Those are considered capital expenditures. A lot of communities do not have $5,000 laying around. A lot of associations operate on slim budgets. And, you know, if you're spending that amount of money, you definitely want somebody that's able to really take the project, take the bull by the horns with the project and finish it until completion, right? So,
Right.
all right. Let's talk about the collaboration and communication, the difference between vendor management and project management. And this is going to be a lengthy conversation. There's a lot of dot points here that we want to clarify on. So the day-to-day communication. Urania, every day, like you said, you've talked to about 8 vendors today for multiple projects and communities, but in a week's time frame, would you say, I mean, I remember when I was managing properties, it was probably close to 100 different forms of communication via email or phone to vendors throughout a week. Would you agree?
Oh yes, easy. Oh, sometimes over 100. Depends on what's going on in each community. It's just a lot of communication, whether it be email, phone, text.
Yeah.
It's all yeah.
Yeah, I
We try
mean,
to avoid text, but with vendors, sometimes it's just easier for them to communicate.
absolutely. Yeah, day-to-day communication is essential. If you don't have that direct communication with the vendors in communities that we manage, you know, how are you supposed to know if they're getting the job done, right? Setting clear expectations is major, because if you don't set clear expectations with the vendors on site early on, mistakes are bound to happen. You know, and folks are bound to be unhappy with you know, like let's say a landscaping plan, for example. If you don't have a landscaping plan, the manager's not aware of or the excuse me, not aware of what phase of each community is being tackled, uh, when the landscapers come through, or when seasonal color is going to be installed, or if the pool is going to be acid washed. You want to definitely set clear expectations with those vendors on what they need to do, when they need to do it. I always recommend Urania. You know this, especially managing properties, the annual calendars. You know, set those expectations with your boards and your vendors of when things need to get done, right?
Absolutely. I am so for the annual calendar. That way you can just know what to prepare for every month, a month ahead. You can always contact your vendor and say, hey, this is going on in February. When in February are you going to do it? When have you got the schedule yet? Have you chosen the seasonal flowers? You know, things like that. It's very important to have the annual calendar because it will keep you organized
And it sets the expectations, right?
yeah,
It sets the expectations with not only the board, the community, but the management firm as well as the vendor. You know, it all kind of falls hand in hand, and it's a really good tool to make sure that everything is getting done. Contact information, you know, obviously you need to have the proper contact information for the vendors. The vendors need to have the proper contact information for the manager. Contact and communication is essential in making sure things are getting done. That flows into communication channels, email, phone call, text, like Urania said. We try to avoid the personal cell phones as much as possible, but sometimes if something needs to get done urgently, that's the easiest way. Regular updates. I love it when vendors take the initiative. Vendors take the initiative and send photos. A lot of landscape companies have started to do this, and it's just an easy documentation that you can forward straight to the board of directors, and so the board can see that the landscapers were out this week. This is what they focused on, or even like, you know, pool vendors have been starting to do it as well. Urania, I think you mentioned there was a pressure washing project recently that you got.
So I love the pressure washing when they take a picture before and after. There was a board who said that they didn't do a job, they didn't see a difference, they didn't need it. And once we saw the pictures that yes, the before needed it, and then the after was a complete night and day difference. We were able to show them that, and they finally like, okay, I get it. And we were
That's
able to.
that's right. I remember that the it was when we were doing pool decks, and
Yes.
we had the pool deck pressure wash, and this board came back and like, why did you have the pool deck pressure wash? And we were like, it was filthy and the pool's about to open in a week or two, and they were like, no, you need to send before and after pictures, and we were able to easily do that, and the board was like, wow, I didn't realize how dirty it was.
Right.
You know, all those regular updates and those photos are awesome. It makes our lives easier. It definitely makes the clients happier too, when they're able to see, you know, that the vendor's actually been out and tackled what they've been contracted to do. I mean, you probably know better than anybody, Urania, that we get requests all the time or emails saying, hey, the landscapers were supposed to be out today and I didn't see them. And you're like,
Absolutely.
well,
Yes.
I have this for you. They were out today.
Yes, I wish every vendor would do that, but more and more vendors, I'm seeing more and more vendors do it. But yes, once they're all get on the same page, we will be smooth sailing.
Absolutely. All right. Issue resolution. So this is also a big one, especially with landscape vendors. In large scale townhome communities or condominiums, you know, that's a huge undertaking for a landscaper, and you know, everybody has a different taste of how they think a lawn or a common area should look. And so, you know, if there's any issues with like landscaping, I'm just using this as an example. The vendor needs to have a, you know, direct form of communication, possibly with even the homeowners. Urania, do you have landscapers that have like an email that homeowners can directly communicate with them if there's an issue?
The only one I have right now is pest control. That it will be great for them to direct them, so I could direct the homeowners to the vendor. But right now,
Yeah.
it's me. I'm the one point of contact, or sometimes the board. The board will have like a board email, and the homeowners email the board, and the board will have a direct contact with the vendor, which is helpful.
Sure. Yeah. You know, anytime there's issues with a vendor, you know, it's always great that you have that vendor, and that you have a relationship with that vendor, and they'll go in and take care of it. So if they have quick resolutions to any problems that arise, those are the vendors you definitely want to be working with. You don't want a vendor that's lazy or doesn't take swift action, because then it's just going to cause frustration within the board or the membership. I mean, even the management company. I mean, you know, as much as we have to sometimes hold hands for vendors, like it makes our jobs a little bit difficult. So if you have that vendor that is, you don't really have to hold their hand, you know, they're going to solve any problems that come to them. That's the vendor that you want to keep for sure.
And this is where the vendor relationship comes in place as well. What comes in handy, where if you have a good relationship with your vendor, they'll resolve that issue very quickly versus a vendor that you do not have a good relationship with. So it's always good to have them on your side. So if something does happen in the community, they will jump and go. Even on the weekends, they will fix it over the weekend just so everyone can remain happy, especially the HOA, the
Absolutely.
community.
Absolutely. Also a vendor that's not going to complain about any changes that are that can handle change management in a positive way. Changes with any kind of service agreement can be frustrating. So if you have a good vendor that can handle change management well, that's always a positive. Obviously, documentation that goes back to regular updates. If the vendor's providing us documentation, or providing the community documentation that the work has been completed, that just makes everybody happy and everybody's lives so much easier. Payments and invoices. I love this topic because so many vendors want immediate payment, and we understand that some vendors they run a smaller organization and they need to get paid quickly to make sure that the job is taken care of. But when you're managing associations, or if you're on the board of a community, you really want to work with vendors that are going to invoice you and work with you on a net 30. By the time you get the invoice, you definitely want to make sure that the job has been completed, review the service, code it pursuant to the annual budget, and release that payment. Vendors that need immediate payment, that can rush a project, or you want to make sure that everything is tidied up before you actually pay that vendor. You don't want to release payment and the work actually not be done, which I've seen happen before. I've seen boards pay with personal funds because a vendor needed immediate payment, and the vendor didn't complete the job, and they never came back. Have you ever dealt with that before, Urania?
Yes, yes. I tell my boards that a commercial vendor understands a net 30 and they have no issues with it. But I try to avoid them paying out of pocket, because that's just not, that's why they have a management company, to avoid those types of situation. I had a homeowner, a board member paid the landscaper, did half the job, left and never came back, and he gave this man $2,000. So
Yeah, see, that's something that you definitely want to avoid. Something that I actually don't have on this presentation, a part of vendor management as well, is you want to make sure that the vendor has proper insurance, and they're bonded and insured. A lot of these vendors that do need quick payment may not have the proper insurance. And another part of the vendor management scope under Ardent's management is that we require all of our vendors to provide a COI before they are even able to get before payments can be released, or they can, provide a COI before they're even permitted to go on the property to perform the work. We want to definitely avoid any risk of that vendor getting hurt on the property. So that is something that we require of all the vendors in any community that we manage. Let's talk about emergency communication. Kind of going back, Urania, where we discussed having those relationships with those vendors that will do anything for you. They'll stop what they're doing if you have an emergency, or even if you're working with vendors that you send that you have a lot of projects with, or they work in a lot of associations. They'll typically go to those associations and take care of it right away. I know there's several plumbers in the Atlanta area that will, if you let them know that there's a water leak at this community, because it may be a regular occurrence if the pipes are old or something, they'll head over there almost immediately. So you definitely want to have a vendor that's swift with any emergency communication, especially those guys like plumbers or roofers. If there's an active roof leak, those vendors that'll get out there fast.
Yes, yes.
Um, all right, let's talk about conflict resolution. I know that I've dealt with situations, Urania, where homeowners have put themselves in front of vendors and, you know, caused a fuss because they were upset about something like, what seasonal color was installed or leaf blowing. That's a big one I've heard a lot. Why do the landscapers come out at 10 a.m. and blow the leaves, So if you have a vendor on site that it can really, handle those situations professionally, that's always a good thing. Some vendors, I've seen some vendors snap if they, get frustrated or interrupted while they're trying to do their job. So if you have a professional vendor on site that handles conflicts well, keep that vendor. And appreciation and acknowledgement. I know Urania talked about this a bit ago, but if you're good to your vendor is going to be good to you. And sometimes good vendors are not easy to find. So we definitely, once you have a good one and they're tackling things for your community and doing a good job and handling situations appropriately, thank your vendors. Make sure that they know that you value them. It's only going to boost the relationship, and they're going to even want to do more for you at the end of the day.
Yes, absolutely. Speaking of the conflict resolution, I had the gutter cleaning on a townhome, and I promise you, it was like a leaf and a twig on one of the homeowners' deck, and she called so upset. And even though it was just a little tiny of debris that fell on her deck, the vendor went out there that same day to blow it off just to make sure she was happy. So that's the type of vendor you definitely want.
Oh
And that's
yeah,
the type of relationship the fact that was able to call him and he's like, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it today. That's that's very rare, but when you do get a vendor like that, you have to cherish them.
absolutely. That's very valuable.
Yes.
All right, let's jump into the project management aspect of collaboration and communication. So the project manager, once hired, is going to come in and they're going to provide an initial presentation and planning, an initial presentation and plan. So they're going to have probably books or digital booklets describing the project from start to finish. They're going to provide the timeline of events, who's going to be hired for the job. They're going to do scoping out of different vendors. They're going to provide bids for the project. Once that contractor is hired, once the project manager provides the bids to the client, to the board, and they select the vendor that they would like to address the project, they are going to work with that vendor directly, make sure that there are regular updates being provided, obviously have transparent communication with the client, and even the membership in some cases, depending on how large the project is. Like this painting project that's going on in one of our communities right now, several forms of communication had to go out regarding the painting, making sure cars were parked in certain spots, making sure that items were removed from decks and patios. And that's a lot of effort in itself, is the communication piece. So that project manager can really focus on transparent communication. They can also do scheduling as it comes to if they had to go into specific homes or units to make sure that something's installed, such as water meters. A lot of communities that were not on separate meters have recently switched over to sub-metering services, which would definitely need a project manager to get those sub-meters installed. So those project managers would have transparent communication between the homeowner and the vendor, making sure that they are able to access their unit. They're also going to be providing customized reporting to the board with a lot of detail. community engagement. They will come to community meetings, have Zoom meetings with the community, explaining everything that's going on and where they are. They'll also address any concerns, like the painting issue with the different color being painted on the side of this unit, or the deck that was being painted a wrong color. So they take care of all of that. They're also going to provide a budget, and then they will also provide financial updates. Mitigating disruptions, which there always will be a disruption, meaning weather related, or even if somebody is unhappy with something and they may stop the vendor from continuing work, that project manager would then jump in and mitigate that. They will always provide timely responses to the client, making sure that the client is very much aware of what is going on. And then once the project is completed, they're going to have a meeting with the board with a final presentation and evaluation of how the project went down. So this is a, from start to finish project manager for any of those large scale projects, with very detailed and a thorough reporting along the way.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and end the webinar. Thank you so much, Urania, for joining me this evening. I appreciate your input and value.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, no problem. But thank you all for joining, and I hope you found this information insightful. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to us via HOA support@myardent.com or call us via 844-9-ARDENT.